Hi everyone, and welcome to our May discussion from the Gather magazine. This one is called The Journey of Generations. We're talking about intergenerational relationships. As you'll notice, I'm in a different spot than what I have been for other videos. There's no artwork behind me. My whiteboard is over there and is blank. I'm sitting in a different spot and I'm a little bit closer to the camera. Just with the nature of this particular study, this devotion, I just felt a different setting was going to work better for this, something that felt a little more sitting down and conversational rather than me standing and pointing at pictures and this and that and the other thing. I don't know if anybody's had the chance to look through this yet, but I encourage you to do so. I'm going to be following this a little differently than what the author has laid out. I think that she does a really good job, Violet Ciccolino Little. I think she does a really good job of bringing up some really interesting points in all this, but there are a few that I was a little more interested in, and I'm going to kind of push and pull that way a little bit. So this won't follow her work perfectly, but it is based off of it, and a lot of it comes from her. So I encourage you to also skim through your magazine if you have it, and to read the questions that she has as well. One of the things that, this is going to be my slight critique of her, sorry, Violet, is I felt that she talked a lot about intergenerational relationships within family systems. And those are so important. So when I say family systems, I mean like grandparents and grandchildren, aunts and their nieces and aunts, uncles, nieces, nephews, grandparents and their great-grandchildren, etc. Children and parents, children and aunts and uncles, all of those things. But I also kind of want to push on our intergenerational relationships that are not in our family systems, because I think those require some different thinking and some different amounts of work. I also think that it's a little bit easier, and this is not always true, right? And this is, so asterisk, not always true. Sometimes it's a little easier to think of or to have intergenerational relationships within our own family because we're already connected, right? Grandparents and grandchildren are already connected. Parents, children, aunts, uncles, and nieces, nephews, etc., already connected in that way. But those intergenerational relationships that require more work, in my mind, are those that are not just inherently a part of our lives. So thinking about, we have the confirmation students have their mentor nights, right? I don't know how many of you are familiar with that, but our confirmation students, when they are in 7th grade, they pick a mentor who journeys with them, so 7th, 8th, and 9th grade, and they have different things that they do together. Some mentors and mentees are family members, but a lot of them, from talking to folks, they are not. I'm sure a number of you are mentors to our confirmation students, and some of you aren't related. It's a relationship that is formed because of church or other things, but definitely obviously rooted in church here as one of those places. So those are the kinds of avenues that I'm going to explore with us here. So one of the things that our author talks about is sometimes we can get caught up in just thinking we are so different from each other. So, I might have opinions about my dad, for example, like, well, Dad, you don't know X, or you don't understand Y because you're of the baby boomer generation and you're not in my generation. There's things that we just don't see eye to eye on because of it. And I know he has those same feelings about me. Or perhaps just in other aspects of our lives, when you talk to people who are older than you or younger than you at church, do you ever find it hard to talk to them about things, or you don't know exactly what to talk about? So here's my first question for you is, what makes intergenerational relationships hard for you? And it can be your intergenerational relationships in your family. So with grandkids, grandparents, children, nieces, nephews, whomever, and also your intergenerational relationships that are not family members. So go ahead and pause the video and just jot some stuff down and think about what makes those things hard for you, and then come on back when you're ready. As you come on back from thinking about what makes some of those things challenging, just a few thoughts that I have for for myself in what makes intergenerational relationships challenging for me. In my own family, thinking about when I was growing up, so all of my grandparents have died, so the next closest generation to me is my dad and my aunts and uncles. But thinking about my grandparents, one of the things that made it hard for me was getting past some of the authority, right? They were in charge of me. They told me what to do, how, when I was right or wrong, or those kinds of things. And sometimes that was hard to break through, to have a different kind of mutual relationship where we were learning from each other. So one of the names for that term is called power dynamics. So my grandparents had authority, had some level of power over me, especially when I was much younger, that I didn't have over them, obviously, as the young person. And so when it came time to having a mutual relationship or wanting to share advice with them, sometimes we were either unwilling to listen to each other or just being open to each other because of those existing dynamics. And sometimes that gets translated over into our non-familial intergenerational relationships, where a lot of places in our lives were designed to see those who are older than us as being more knowledgeable, as kind of they inherently can be right more often than folks who are younger. Older folks are supposed to teach younger people. And, this doesn't have to be, when I say older, I want to put a little definition asterisk in here. When I say older, it doesn't mean, grandparent, grandchild. It can, it's even me, at my age to somebody who is 3, right? What do I think a 3-year-old has to teach me? We are inherently thinking of, if I'm a Sunday school teacher to teach, 3-year-olds, I'm imparting knowledge to them. We don't necessarily see right away the mutuality of that relationship and what they're also teaching me. And we also use phrases like what they also teach me. The inherent understanding is that I, the older person, have knowledge to give, and they, the younger people, anybody who, or when they give knowledge back to me, it's that also like that bonus, like, oh, I didn't know that mutuality existed between us. And that's just how we were all raised. That's how I was raised. And so sometimes it's really hard in our intergenerational relationships to not always see them as whomever is older is wiser and is inherently right and has all of those things, and that the younger person is always inherently lacking in their knowledge and their experience. So one of my questions in relation with that is not in our study here, is how do we work through that? How do we approach relationships with all people, regardless of age, as a relationship that is inherently mutual, that with an expectation that we will learn something from each other, that we both have gifts to bring and to share, and all of those gifts are equally valid and equally important, and more than that, are a part of God's Spirit bringing us together as the body of Christ. So go ahead and pause the video and just reflect a little bit on that question. How do we start to break some of that down? How do we approach our relationships without thinking that one of us is always giving and the other one is inherently lacking? And I know it's a big question, so feel free to take as much time as you need with that. So go ahead and pause the video and then come on back when you're ready. as you're coming back from thinking about this pretty big question, I will tell you I do not have any answers. I have ideas, but I don't have perfect answers. I know it takes a lot of work. I think of the work that I did this year with our 9th grade confirmation students. And there's something about even the word like student, and I am the intern who is leading 9th grade confirmation with Pastor Fred. I am the teacher, they are the student. And I definitely, was in a space of, here am I, this wonderful intern who will impart all of this knowledge so that you will all deeply care about Jesus and right? And as we know, that's not what happens. I mean, I hope that they learn something from me. But it's not just this I give to you and you're just this empty cup that I'm pouring into, but rather we are pouring into each other. We are being the body of Christ to each other. And so saying to myself before I would meet with the 9th graders, to expect to learn something, say it to myself, Leah, expect to learn something tonight. And that helped me to not come in with this unintentional but still present mind space of I am here to teach you. And I think of, and I know some of you know Molly, Pastor Sally's daughter, comes with her on Thursdays to the office. And Molly and I spend some time hanging out together on Thursdays. It's great fun. I've learned many, many things. But even in that relationship, and that's an intergenerational relationship for me, is I have to remember that anything that Molly might learn from me, I'm also learning things from her too. And not just, WWE and about all of the new Barbies, but I'm learning from her what it means to be a kid. I don't remember what it's like to be 8. I mean, I have some memories of being 8, but I don't know what it's like to be 8 and to do school the way that kids are doing school today. I don't know what it's like to be 8 and over a year ago, one day I just didn't go back to school. I stayed home and everything was online and it was weird and I couldn't go see my friends. And I don't know what those emotions are like at the age that Molly's at, or the age that anybody younger than me is at, or the different pressures people are facing at school, or when kids talk about the pandemic at school or in their school setting, and people's parents have different beliefs than they do, and those discussions and how to navigate those at that age. There's a lot happening there that I don't understand. And what a privilege it is to be able to have Molly in my life, to learn about those things from her and to share in those emotions with her. Not in this, let me solve all the problems, but like, how do we be human together? And how do we be human together at different stages in our lives? One of the questions that I thought was really beautiful that our author asked in this study is, what do you love? And what a beautiful place that conversational question is when we are gathering with people whom we maybe don't know, or whom we maybe don't expect to have shared interests or shared, albeit different, experiences with, especially in our intergenerational lives together. And so that's a question that I would encourage you to ask folks, whether it's the people you live with right now, or your grandchildren, or anybody who is not of the same generation as you are. What do you love? And what a beautiful place to start relationships at, with this question, what do you love? And when we think about what it means to be followers of Christ, and Christ shows us the way to love, asking people that question, what do they love? How can I love you? Is a really beautiful question, because it assumes that I want to be loving to you, but I maybe don't know how you need to be loved. as we kind of continue into this study here, she talks about some different intergenerational relationships that we see in the Bible, and she names the relationship between Mary, the mother of Jesus, and her cousin or relative, depending on which gospel, Elizabeth, and how they have that shared experience of being pregnant together, albeit in very different circumstances, but at the same time and in different ways in that intergenerational relationship. One story that she didn't point out that I thought of was the relationship between Naomi and Ruth, this mother-in-law and daughter-in-law relationship. They have this shared experience of really deep and intense grief of husbands dying, of Naomi's children dying, and yet they are brought together in that grief. They form a very close relationship. Where you go, I will go. Where you stay, I will stay. Your God will be my God. And they don't abandon each other. They stay with each other. So in thinking about our pandemic life together, how have your intergenerational relationships changed? How are they better, worse, stronger, weaker? New relationships, old relationships? Just where are they at in all of that? So go ahead and pause the video and just reflect on some of where are you at in all of your intergenerational relationships at this time. And then, as always, come on back with me when you're ready. Welcome back to this discussion. And I would really love to hear from you all. As I've normally said, I always love to hear what your thoughts are on these things. And I especially would love to hear your thoughts on this topic. And so, thinking about where your intergenerational relationships are at. For me here at St. John's, my intergenerational relationships are a lot better, but perhaps just different. Being in an actual ministry context, so not at seminary. Not that I don't have intergenerational relationships at seminary, I do. They're different. Some of them are my professors who are of a different generation than I am, and some of them are my classmates who are also in different generations. I'm thinking of here at St. John's, I have relationships with all kinds of people in so many different ways. And one of the gifts that I get is that because for some reason I have this fancy title called intern, there are folks who are older than I am who respect, or maybe respect isn't the right word, but who listen to the words that I say differently than what I've ever experienced at any other time in my life. And some of that comes with the title. Some of that comes with being in seminary, and people know that I've taken classes and what have you. But for me, one of the things that has really taught me is that is something that I wish to embody in my relationships going forward, regardless of what titles people have or what classes that I know they've taken. But just that gift of somebody who is younger than I am, knowing that I believe them, and that their words have meaning and merit, and that their experiences are valued and valuable and legitimate, and that they're not just this inherently empty cup that somebody who is older is always trying to pour into. As we kind of wrap up here, the author writes in her conclusion, intergenerational friendships are among God's greatest gifts. Are you willing to receive this gift? Are you able to step outside of your generation? As you can see, there are so many gifts just waiting to be unwrapped. And I thought that was some really interesting language. First of all, it's this invitation, right? God did not just call the body of Christ your same aged group of people, but it is the entire body of Christ. When a person is baptized, no matter how old they are when they are baptized, we say to them, we welcome you into the body of Christ and into the mission we share. Join us in giving thanks and praise to God and bearing God's creative and redeeming word to all the world. And we say that to that person, whether they are 2 months old or 22 years old. It does not matter. And for me, that is what I am taking away the most from this devotional, is no matter how old we are, the resounding phrase that we as the body of Christ say to our newest members is, we welcome you into the body of Christ and into the mission we share. We welcome you into our mission, whether you can put 2 words together to form a sentence, or whether you have memorized the encyclopedia. We welcome you into the mission we share, whether you know how to walk, whether you can see, whether you can hear. We welcome you into the mission we share, no matter if you even remember your baptism, or even if you do remember your baptism. And so for me, as I think about this study and what it brought out for me, that's what I'm moving forward with in this, is just this reminder of our baptismal identity, words that were spoken over us when we were baptized, and words that we speak over each new member. And what a shift that is for me in my mind when I approach people, that they are a part of the mission we share. Their work is just as valuable and just as important. Their experiences are just as real as anything that I have. And I need them, and they need me. We need each other as the body of Christ, regardless of how old or young we are, regardless of what life experiences we have or don't have. And my other asterisk in this whole study is, this is not to say that our experiences as we age are not valuable. As we age, we gain wisdom and perspective and understanding, and those things are all important and all worth sharing. But we also have to remember, and I know that this goes for me too, I think there is some inherent wisdom in youth, in our youngest members, that we have been kind of conditioned to find less valuable. And so I say to myself, to you again, as we go forth from this time together, a reminder of those words at baptisms. We welcome you into the body of Christ and into the mission we share. Join us in giving thanks and praise to God and bearing God's creative and redeeming word throughout the world. What a beautiful phrase of intergenerational living that is for me, and I hope it might be for you too. As always, I would love to hear your thoughts, reflections, questions, comments, concerns, snide remarks, anything you have about this time together. I appreciate getting to do this with you, and we will see you all next time.